We're here today with Darrell Barton, a longtime photojournalist with WKY-TV and later worked as a freelancer overseas. Darrell, welcome to the Oklahoman.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
You, as I said, you began your career at Wichita, and then worked at WKY.
I worked at WKY, changed names a lot of times after that at Channel 4 for 15 years. I was chief photographer, sometimes depending on what they wanted to call me at the time. And I left there in January 1st of '84 to go freelance. And I wanted to be a network freelancer. So I worked for all three networks, mainly for NBC and CBS.
And some of the places where you were stationed included?
For the first few years, I worked in the States, but I worked in Central America for NBC a lot for the first few years. In Nicaragua, Honduras, Panama, and Haiti. And then in the late 80s, I spent some time for NBC in the Middle East, in Baghdad during Saddam's time in Baghdad. That was during the Iran-Iraq War. And then in various Middle Eastern countries, Dubai and Bahrain. I did a documentary in Israel at the start of the Intifada.
Okay.
In Gaza.
Then 9/11 happened.
Well, I was ready to retire. I was just almost 60 years old at the time, and I was ready to retire. And when 9/11 happened, I thought, this is probably the biggest story of my life. And so I called CBS. I was working primarily for the CBS show 48 Hours at the time, and I called CBS and said, I want to go. And they said, well, that's not our story. And so I kept after them, and finally, right after the Americans went into Kabul, I went over to Pakistan and Jalalabad, Afghanistan for 60 minutes. And then after that, I stayed in Kabul for CBS Evening News. And then for a couple of months, that story transitioned into a couple of 60-minute stories with Dan Rather over there.
Then the Americans invade Iraq.
Yeah, and I didn't want to go.
And because?
I thought the war was wrong. I mean, seriously, I thought it was a bad deal. And I told them, they asked me whether I would go, and I said, no. I said, I don't think I'll make good company. And then I got thinking about it, and I thought, yeah. And so I went. And I think in the summer of '82, I guess, '83, I don't know, and spent a couple of months over there.
02 or 03?
That'll be '03, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
'03, I guess.
Right.
And I lose track. And spent some time over there, and then came back, and I was laying on my couch one morning, and I'd been back in town for a while, and my wife, when I woke up, I'd taken a nap, my wife says, well, they caught Saddam Hussein. And I said, well, that's good. And my phone rang, and they said, can you be on a plane to Islamabad in an hour and a half? I said, no. I said, I can be on a plane in 2 hours, but not an hour and a half. And so I went, and 24 hours later, I was standing in the hole where they caught Saddam. So.
What is it that drives journalists like you and I to such dangerous places?
Well, I think there are different reasons for different people. I think Foley, Anthony Shadid were people who actually...
Jim Foley, the
Yeah.
photojournalist
Right.
who was murdered this week by the
Right.
ISIS
And Anthony Shadid,
militants.
a year or so ago, who died, actually, he died in Syria covering the Syrian conflict.
and who grew up in Oklahoma City.
Right, yeah, and has a lot of contacts here. Those are people who were doing it, I think, maybe purely for the story. I mean, very altruistic reasons, and they, and I admire them greatly for that. I don't think that is necessarily the case for a lot of people, including myself. I think people ask me why I kept going back to places like that, and I like the life.
Well, what was it about the life? Well,
It was, it's an adrenaline rush, and I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie. You run into old friends. You know, there's nothing quite. I guess it sounds silly, but I mean, after 2 or 3 days of intense excitement, to sit around in a bar somewhere and have some drinks with old friends, and tell old stories. It's a natural thing, and that may sound shallow, but I think that was a lot of the reason that I did it.
You make friends over time when you're in that business. It's a small group of people, I guess, so you lose friends too.
You lose friends. Sometimes in situations you forget, things can seem very calming. Sometimes it can almost seem like a game. And I had a good friend of mine named Paul Douglas, who was a British cameraman for CBS. And Paul used to tell me, he says, "Darrell, you take too many chances." And I said, "You're taking the same chances I am." And I think in 2004, he was killed doing a Memorial Day feature of all things.
In Iraq.
In Iraq, yeah. In Baghdad, yeah. Death is, death, you never accept it. But things have changed. It's not the same, where these guys are, where Foley was. This isn't the same thing.
It seems as though murder is becoming something of a communication strategy for some of the, well, I won't characterize them, but the bad guys.
Well, yeah, they're bad guys. I mean, murder is a bad thing. It's a bargaining chip. It's no longer just, it's not combat. The slang term we used to call it as bang bang. Was there any bang bang today? Well, that's not combat. Murder's not bang bang. Murder's not combat. Murder's murder. And I've thought a lot about, in the last few days, of trying to figure out what really happened, maybe what was going on in his mind, which we'll never know. Did he get complacent? I don't know. Did he had to have, he had to have known something was going wrong before he was captured. One of the ways you stay alive in places is to try to come to some personal meeting with the people around you, even if they are, quote, on the other side. And obviously he had been good at that, but it didn't work for him.
And eventually pays a price.
He paid a price, and I don't know why.
Well, thank you very much, Darrell Barton, longtime photojournalist, joining us today. You can read more of our interview with Darrell on newsok.com and in the Oklahoman. Darrell, thank you very much.
Thank you.